a case study of Her Story web series. Let's introduce the team behind this terrific show. Let's start with the stars and writers, Jen Richards and Laura Zak. We have producer Katherine Fisher. And joining us is their publicist, a good friend of ours, president of Big Time PR, Sylvia Desrochers. Jen and Laura, tell us about the germ of this story. Why tell this story, and why a web series?
So Jen and I actually met on the set of another web series that I did that shot in Chicago called Hashtag, and that was about the dating and love lives of these two queer women friends in the Andersonville neighborhood of Chicago. And there was a small cameo role that called for a trans actress to play a trans waitress in the show that my character flirts with. And so Jen, one of the producers, knew Jen and brought her on set. And so the first time she and I ever interacted was actually flirting with each other on camera. So we hadn't properly been introduced yet and said hi, hello. So that was our first interaction, and then we properly met afterward and got coffee and ended up hitting it off and finding that we had a lot of things in common and a similar educational background. And so we just really liked each other and wanted to work together. And so then we Jen approached our producer at the time about the idea of originally writing a spin-off of Hashtag, exploring a relationship between our two characters, which fairly quickly evolved to move away from that idea and instead write an entirely new story and new characters and a new world, but still based on that core relationship.
And you were based in Chicago at the time, right?
We both had lived in Chicago. I had already moved back to LA, but was in Chicago for shooting that web series.
So you wanted to make it an LA-based story?
Actually, yeah.
No, actually, it was very Chicago-based. The first draft of it was set in Chicago in the winter, and that very much informed the tone and a lot of the interactions. And when we changed producers, when Cait came on board, her one requirement was that we'd have to shift the location to Los Angeles. So we had to do a quick another draft and take out all the Chicago references, put in the LA references, and kind of lighten it up a little bit.
Although there are still Chicago references. The Lady Gregory's the name of the bar. Yeah. That's a real bar in Andersonville and whatnot.
So the script you wrote was how long? And did you have any concept of how many episodes it would be and how long those episodes were?
Yeah, that was all from the start, because in its original form, it was supposed to be for this production company in Chicago, and they wanted 6 to 8 short episodes. So that was always the idea, was to break it up in that way.
Cait, how did you get involved?
So Laura and I worked together in our old job at V-Day, which is a nonprofit, and we were roommates. When I moved to LA, I moved in with Laura. And Jen was visiting one time, and they were just doing a read-through of the script, and I helped them with it. And I just kind of fell in love with the script, and at the time, the other production company was kind of going back and forth in terms of what they could offer, and so I just kind of saw it as an opportunity to kind of jump in and try to work with them.
She poached us.
I poached them.
Stole your girl.
Okay.
I took their girls. That's how I roll.
So, I know we've talked about this before, but talk about the decision to kind of where to place this budgetarily, and the original idea was to shoot just on a 5D or something, right? And then suddenly it became this bigger thing.
Yeah, it started off even smaller than that, because the original budget for the original production was about $10,000. This was just a little thing that our friends and I were going to do in Chicago that our friends would see, and that was it. When Cait got involved, she'd occasionally call me like, "Oh, you know what? Do you mind? We've doubled the budget. Is that okay?" I'm like, I started getting more and more nervous. Call again like a week later. We've doubled the budget again. And by the time the first day I showed up on set, and there were multiple cameras and costumes and craft services, what the hell have we gotten into?
Well, no, that was the scene that you saw of our meet cute, basically. That's actually a lot of the scenes were shot at the house that Cait and I live in, and so that the coffee shop was our patio that we turned in to make look like a coffee shop. And so that was I think that was our first scene that we shot.
But the first day was Paige and James's date.
Right, but that was our first scene. But that was a
Yes.
moment where I was looking around like, who are all these people in my house?
It was
They
so
all
surreal.
believe in this? Yeah.
Well, because this was my first script. You know, I was living in Chicago. I just came out to LA to do this. I thought I'm a no one. Like, why are all these people who are very serious professionals gathered around to like make this thing a reality? These are just voices in my head. I'm not supposed to like people aren't supposed to spend money on it.
Yeah, it was a fine line, and every time I had to call them or call Jen to like be like, oh, the budget's gone up, I always felt nervous and being like, I don't know, like, is this gonna like freak her out? Is this gonna, you know, what's this gonna be? So it was always kind of, there was a fine line between making sure that they were, you know, that they were prepared in terms of what they were coming into, but also weren't like too freaked out, so that, you know, the fact that we moved from, you know, a 5D to a red, you know, I don't know that that really sunk in until you saw, you know, until you came on and saw, you know, what that actually entailed in terms of gear and crew and, you know, everything like that.
Well, and I always tell people, like, we're kind of, you know, this is a case study, but we're at such an anomaly, you know, as this whole thing has been so anomalous and so odd and kind of inexplicable. And just the core of what we're talking about right now, like, I'm a writer with the first script, and a producer is nervous about telling me she's going to spend more money on it. This is not a problem that most people generally have.
But a wise producer who's insulating you from all this. Yeah. So
Yeah, she was
but
very
why-
good at that.
Why was the budget? Why did it keep going up? Why those decisions to
Sydney.
go from a 5D to
It was
a
awesome.
web
The
series
director,
shot on
the one
on
who
a
Sydney.
red?
Yeah.
It was, well, so, you know, we started off, it was very small. The second Sydney Freeland, our director, signed on, you know, to direct, we saw an opportunity there to make this a little bit bigger and to have a bigger audience and to grow it. And if we were going to do that, I wanted to do it right. I wanted to do it to the highest quality we could make it. So Sydney came on board, and then we kind of narrowed it down to about 5 DPs that we really wanted to work with. We got our first choice in Berenice Avino, and then once Bear got involved, that's when, you know, there's certain things that she requires to do her job, you know, right, and to take advantage of both Sydney and Bear and their skills, you know, you need to give them the tools necessary to do that. So that's why we kind of agreed to do it, and we knew that that would pay off in the end, maybe not monetarily, but at least in terms of, you know, exposure and hopefully reviews and hopefully, you know, press and everything like that. You know, the higher the quality, the better chance.
But how could you have anticipated that? This is like, there's no web series had gotten this kind of attention. Web series weren't eligible for Emmys, much less things that were just on YouTube. We had no celebrities. It was the first script. How the hell could you have known that any of this good stuff was coming?
We didn't know, but
Then
that
why
was
did you put so much money into
because it gives you the best chance. We needed the best chance. We definitely weren't going to do it without doing
That's why
it.
I'm not a
Thank you
executive
for giving
producer.
them the vehicle to express their true feelings.
Do you want to switch seats with me?
We don't need much help talking.
What can you tell us what the budget was in the end?
It was about 150,000.
Okay. And where was the financing from? How much was there investors or donations? I know there was a crowdfunding campaign as well.
Yeah, we did a crowdfunding campaign that raised about $40,000 from about 600 different people all around the world, which was amazing. That went to post-production. We had a grant from V-Day, our old employer, that helped. We got a finishing fund as well from Frameline. And then the rest was private. It was basically my graduate school savings. This was my graduate school.
Sylvia, when did you get involved?
We got involved, I think production was done, but you were getting ready for post. Yeah, okay. So we got involved, actually we were talking about it before this, a long time ago. We've been with them on a long part of this journey because it was last summer, so not this most previous, but the summer before, and it was right before they did their crowdfunding campaign, so we came in and helped them strategize how to utilize the timing of the campaign, and we put the trailer out, I think, at the beginning of the crowdfunding campaign, and it also timed to some Jen, you were on I Am Cait right then too, right? On Caitlyn Jenner's show. So we were timing it out so that it would, you know, give us the best exposure and give them the best chance of raising the most amount of money they could during the crowdfunding campaign. And because we did that, we got a lot of press just for the crowdfunding campaign, like way more than I usually get for crowdfunding campaigns, to be honest, because it's just, any of you that have done them, you know it's not so easy to get press for those. So it just was really, really good timing, and I think we all strategized really well to do that. So, and I think I met you because of Sydney.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, you
Yeah, because I worked on Sydney Freeland, the director of the project. I did her previous film at Sundance. I had worked with her, so.
Was that Drunk Town's Finest?
Yeah, Drunk
Okay.
Town's Finest, exactly.
So having celebrity friends is a real key to success. That really helps a lot.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
but
does.
utilizing it, that's what they did so well, is just kind of strategizing in terms of how to use, the people that we already had on board in terms of publicity, but also how to best leverage just the trailer or the crowdfund and then get that out there. And then the other thing that we did was we had a behind-the-scenes director on set with us for the majority of the shoot, getting a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, and she was kind of simultaneously putting out little clips and content that we could use to kind of keep people interested after that initial push that Sylvia and her team did, and that proved extremely beneficial as well. But yeah, in terms of like when you release that stuff and when you go out and when you try to do this, that, and the other, Jen being taking advantage of the things that were happening that we didn't have control over, and that's what you guys did so amazingly and just have been doing since for the last year and a half. They've been amazing.
We had a lot of conversations about, I was looking at my old notes before coming here today because I was like, I need to remember how this journey started. And so I saw all our emails back and forth about when to release the trailer exactly. And the thing is, we got lucky in some ways because you strategize and you pick a day, but it could turn out, something could happen that day that will just blow you out of the water. So, I guess you can all strategize as much as you want, but sometimes there's luck involved, So I think there was a little bit of both.
I wanted to sort of rewind quickly and talk a little bit about the shoot. I mean, I would imagine shooting a web series is similar to shooting a short film or a feature, but did you shoot the entire series in one go, or did you just shoot the first episode and stop and take a break? How did that work?
We did, the principal photography was 14 days. And then after a rough cut, we were able to, built into the budget were a couple of days for shooting new scenes. Once we saw where the holes were in the story, Jen and I wrote some new scenes, and then we shot those about 3 or 4 months after the original production.
But it wasn't in order in part because Angelica Ross, the lead who plays Paige, was only available for 6 days. She came directly from like a 5-day retreat, and at the end of it had to go to another speaking engagement. So she came in and we did all of her scenes back to back over 6 days.
So you didn't shoot episode 1, episode 2?
No, it was more of a film approach.
Right. So, but at this point, did you know where your sort of chapter breaks were, or did you find those in
It was
post?
scripted that way.
Okay. But each episode is not necessarily the same length either, right?
Well, and some of it moved around, though, in the editing. Not every, it wasn't completely, it didn't honor the script versions of the episode breaks exactly, but generally it did. But yeah, they're all a little bit different in length, in part because of cuts that were made and editing, or extra scenes that were added later. So yeah, they aren't all exactly, but they're all average around 8-7 minutes.
And is there a reason for that? Did you sort of look into what works best for web series? Are there some that are 3 minutes long? I don't.
It just felt right.
Okay.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of this, like, every time I do these panels, I kind of feel bad because, in retrospect, you can kind of create all this, like, oh, it's strategic, we're emulating this,
Right.
we're approaching this model, but it wasn't. It was my first script. I was alone in a living room in
Right.
Chicago in the winter and just wrote it. And then, like, Laura kind of helped bring life to it, and light and humor and love and all these things, but it was never that mindful because there were no stakes when we started. You have to remember, like, this was just a little thing our friends and I were doing that no one was
Right.
going to see. So we couldn't have anticipated any of this.
And we also did toy around with the idea of, we went back and forth on the idea of making it into a pilot as well, and not having episode breaks. And eventually we went back to, so we had a cut where it was just all the way through, and we realized then that, obviously the way that it had been written as an episodic was the way that it should be presented, worked the best.
And I feel like it's pretty consistent with the community that we were engaging with as well, because I think web series are becoming more and more, integrated into the content that people take in on a daily basis. And a lot of our crowdfunding audience were people who are on Twitter and engaging with us online already. So it made sense to go to that space for where they could watch it, and it was important to us to not have it be behind a paywall as well.
Which segues into my next point about sort of building your audience. I hear so many times filmmakers meet with distributors and they've got a sort of niche sort of audience out there, and the distributors are always saying, oh, I don't know how to sell this, we don't know how to reach this audience, and yet those turn out to be the projects that the filmmakers themselves do most successfully with a sort of a self-release, because they are in touch with that audience and they can build it. And there's a desperate need for people to see themselves on screen. So how do you start that? How did Sylvia, how were you involved in building the audience for this before the launch?
Well, I think some of it was very smart on Cait's part, that she approached us early. So a lot of people come to us, and probably other publicists have this issue too, and they're about to launch in a couple of weeks. And it's not that we can't do anything with a truncated time period, but it's just a lot harder to actually build something in a short amount of time. So, the fact that we've been on this a year and a half shows that this wasn't something that happened overnight. It took a long time to build it, but it started with the crowdfunding campaign, and that was, I think, very thoughtfully done in order to start building that audience, which a lot of people do use crowdfunding campaigns in that way. That's not necessarily a new thing. It worked really well in this case. And I think you started to build your audience there, and then you already had a built-in kind of small group that was really invested both monetarily and sort of spiritually in seeing this do well. And then once you have sort of your core group, I think some communities this works better than others, but I think this particular community is very vocal with each other and shares information and is online and very active. So, they were sharing, I think, online sort of how great they thought the series was. So they sort of became our mouthpieces in some ways. And then the other part is, of course, we were really blessed to get a lot of great press. And so that, I don't think you can have one without the other and build an audience. So you really have to have that grassroots component and traditional press. I think they work best when you have both, and we did in this case. And I think that was a big contributor to why you've been so successful. Because we had like the New York Times and the LA Times, and you had people online talking, just sharing it on Twitter. Third part, sorry, there's a third part, was you had a lot of great celebrity support as well, which is also nice because they become sort of like advertisements for it. You had Laverne Cox, who has been a big fan. Eve Ensler came on as an executive producer. I know that helped us a lot. I know when we were pitching for the Emmy campaign, for example, one of our pitches to the press was saying, look at these wonderful tweets from, Kerry Washington was one, right? Yeah. So I remember we put that in the pitch and said, check out this great tweet that Kerry Washington sent. And we actually used that with the press to get them more interested in seeing that, oh, this is a legit Emmy thing that I need to cover. So, that was also having, it's nice to have famous friends. Is that what you said? Yeah. It helps. Yeah. It definitely helps.
These were friends of yours, Jen?
Most of them.
Yeah. And I would imagine it's a very small community within the business here, the sort of trans actors and figures within the industry, right?
Yeah, all six of us know each other. We get together every Sunday night. It's been great. Well, because that indicates in a small way a bigger part of our story, which is for most of the core team, Laura, Cait, myself, and Angelica, we had all had. We'd all started off in media and theater and things like that when we were young, and then went into nonprofit and social justice work for the decade prior to her story. And then when we did her story, we kind of brought all of that lens, that kind of intersectional social justice, very contemporary, engaged with discourse that was evolving day by day online, and all of that informed the media that we created. And so we had an audience that was ready for that, and we had an audience whose respect we had already earned. I basically knew every trans person in the country already because I had been doing activism in that community for years, and had so many people felt like they owed me favors or wanted to support me because of the things I had been doing for them. Likewise with Cait and Laura and Eve Ensler. So we already had a lot of love and respect kind of built up for it, and then it just so happens that several friends of mine became famous over the course of the last few years, like Laverne Cox and Janet Mock, et cetera. So all of these things kind of coalesced in a happy accident.
Right, the timing was very sort of fortunate for you, right? You sort of, it become mainstream at just the right time for you with
Yeah,
and
well,
Cait
and then I was
Laverne
on
Cox and-
E every
right.
week, right, as we're trying to fundraise this. So, that, I mean, that certainly helped. And when the trailer first came out, people, like, they asked us to host it exclusively for the first 24 hours. And it was just because anything anywhere related to Caitlyn Jenner was newsworthy at that time. So it was like, I am Cait star Jen Richards' next project or something. It had nothing really to do with her story. They just wanted something with Caitlyn in the title. And that's fine. It worked for us.
Now, you didn't actually, the launch was a sort of a physical event, right? It wasn't a virtual thing. You started with a proper screening, right? What was the thinking behind that, rather than just throw it up online?
Right. I mean, there was a couple of things that went into play there. One was festivals. We did want to try to get into Sundance, which required it to be a premiere. So we had to hold off between doing the trailer and then releasing it online. When we found out that we didn't get into Sundance, we had already gotten into Newfest, and that then became kind of a sneak peek. But we still wanted to kind of hold. Mostly because at that point we hadn't done any lead up to kind of release it at Newfest. By the time we found out about Sundance, it was too late to kind of really do a push to launch it. So we stuck with our initial, our kind of Sundance release date, which would have been in January. So we did Newfest as a sneak peek, and that was an event. We had a really big sold out screening there, followed by a panel. It was actually like a year ago, like right now.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
Newfest
this
is
is
going right now.
anniversary.
Yeah, so this is like a nice bookend. And on another panel, you're Laverne Cox in this case. Welcome.
I'll do my best.
So Laverne Cox moderated our panel at Newfest, and that kind of really set the stage and gave us another thing to promote and get out there, gave us another opportunity to really kind of push some like behind the scenes stuff, keep people engaged. And then we started the push for releasing it for the actual launch of the series for January. And we wanted to do two things. One, we wanted to release it all at one time so that people could watch it all the way through. We had talked about maybe releasing like an episode a week, but that kind of went off the table. We wanted to release it all at once, and we wanted to do it at like a college, at something local, something that we could kind of connect with people. So we did it and we also wanted to kick off a college tour that we ended up doing, and so we started off at Cal State East Bay, which has a really great diversity program that hosted us. And that was the launch. So we were like in like Motel 6 or whatever on our computers, pressing like the publish, when we wanted to actually launch the series. And then it went out, and that was followed up very quickly thereafter with a West Coast premiere at Outfest West Hollywood.
And you're obviously letting your followers know as well through all social media outlets, right? So they're ready to sort of pounce when the episodes drop.
Yeah, we did like a countdown on all of our social and releasing like new video and photo content leading up to it. So yeah, everyone was highly aware.
And Sylvia, I had a question for you about the difference between kind of launching a web series and launching a movie. I mean, we all know how important it is for filmmakers to get their audience there at the opening weekend. But a web series is kind of launched, it's up there, and it's up there forever. And sometimes it could take a few months to find an audience before that it goes viral. But how do you balance that sort of sense of urgency with, letting people know that something's up there when, they don't have to be there opening weekend, that the audience could discover it months later?
Yeah, I would say we also, just if there's any filmmakers in the room, we also have this issue with films that go straight to VOD or any kind of VOD launch too. So it applies to both, what I'm going to say, because it is tricky. And what we have found from we work on a number of web series and we do a lot of VOD stuff, is that the press still want to cover it at launch. They just aren't that interested. I've had people come to me and say, my show's been up for a month and I haven't gotten that much traction, and can we do some press? And the fact is probably not. Like, I probably wouldn't take that project, to be honest, because I know it's gonna be an uphill battle to get the press to cover it. They really still want to feel that they're covering something that's fresh and new. So it's not so much that you can't still find your audience after you've launched, it's just, if you're thinking of the more traditional component of getting coverage in the press, it's gonna be a lot harder if you don't grab them when you are premiering, because that's what they want to be a part of that moment, And so, like I said before, in this case, Cait came to me a long time before the launch. We had months to plan and we had months to build the audience. So I would say, when you're looking at either doing a web series or launching anything online, you get a movie or a series, just think ahead, try to think way ahead. And if it means delaying your release, which is what we did in this case, I think it's worth it, because otherwise you're going to just you're going to give yourself you're going to give yourself a reason to fail before you've even started. So that's how I approach it. I won't even take projects unless we have a decent amount of time to actually start building that, because otherwise it's going to be impossible.
This is why it's so important to have producers who are smarter than you, because I just wanted to get it out there right away, and it's like, let's just go, let's go, let's go. Kate's like, no, we're going to do it this way for this reason. And she was right.
But once it was up, you're still playing festivals, right? You played at LA Film Festival. Festivals are programming more short-form web series, right?
Yeah, that was a surprise, actually. I thought that because it was out and available for free, no less, that the festivals wouldn't be that interested. But we've gotten into some great ones. LA Film Festival being, obviously amazing, and like Seattle Web Fest, Melbourne Web Fest. A few big ones that have been, super beneficial. And I think that the category is becoming more prevalent, not only in festivals, but in awards as well, just in the last 12 months, which has been super beneficial for us, just in terms of timing. But yeah, I think people are starting to catch on to the value of short form programs and new media in general, because I think there is, more exciting content coming out.
Well, and also the whole, kind of binge approach to television has benefited us, because these festivals end up programming us as a kind of feature. They play all 6 episodes back to back because it's less than an hour, so it can take a feature slot, with a Q&A afterwards, and audiences are used to engaging in content in that kind of way. So we've benefited from that shift in viewing habits as well.
There's been a huge shift in the last year. Just as someone who's worked on web series for the last 5 years or so, it's enormous, the change. Just the fact that, like LAFF, including the web series and the Emmys, I mean, it's enormous, the change. Because 5 years ago, I couldn't get a web series arrested. So this has been, and it really does benefit you guys. Sometimes you hit things at the right moment, and that is, you have to have a good show, you have to do a good product, and you have to strategize well. All that's important, but sometimes you're just really lucky.
How do TV sort of commissioners view web series now? Are they looking to the web as potential sources for new talent? Broad City is a good example of something that turned into a TV show on Comedy Central, right?
Yeah, and High Maintenance,
Yep.
and I believe Showtime just picked up another web series called F to 7th. I think, yeah, indeed, they are looking for original content there, but also it seems that a lot of major networks are also creating spaces now that are specifically for new media. So under their umbrella, have a space for short form as well. So I think it's both, they're wanting to put out short form,
Okay.
as well as looking to existing independent content for the talent.
And a lot of this is spin-off of existing shows, right? These short-form things.
Yeah, that was certainly the case with, in the Emmy
that's-
category, we were the only independent, and all of the other, with the exception of Children's Hospital.
Children's Hospital was originally a TV show on Comedy Central, and then it went to the web, so it
Okay.
still had that. The others were all supplements to The Walking Dead, Broad City, Unreal, and then us. So we were a complete outlier in the category.
Yeah, they got an Emmy nomination amongst those
Feel free to clap.
heavyweights.
It's okay.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about getting that nomination and the work you had to do, what you could afford to do and what you couldn't afford to do, and still get that nomination. It's an amazing story. Cait, you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, the process to get even eligible for nomination for an Emmy is ridiculous and expensive. You have to pay a $500 fee just to apply, And that just gets your name up there. In order for anyone in the Academy to see your series, you have to either pay $5,000 for the first episode to upload the first episode, and then $2,000 for every subsequent episode to have it on there so people can watch it and then vote for it on the Emmy site. Or you have to pay to get DVD screeners made, in which case then you then have to send them to the Academy. And for every 7, I think, DVDs that they send out to their 18,000 members, you have to pay the Academy $175. So it's a
So we just had our name.
ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, we
that
just did the
obviously
first
couldn't
thing.
do. So we just had our name. So we were asking people to basically to do a 2-step process, whereas everybody else that could afford to do that, you know, you go to the Emmy site, you watch it, you vote. We were asking people to know that we were nominated, go to our YouTube page, watch the website, go back to the Emmys, vote. So from the beginning, we knew that it was kind of a long shot. But I think because of this, you know, community, especially online community that we'd been engaging with for the last year and a half, or year and a half, we had kind of the support to kind of get it out there so that people were tweeting, and we had video, we had a little For Your Consideration video made that we got out there. We worked with a company called Nom that worked at cost to place that video on various YouTube channels, and it's basically the ad that pops up for a lot of people, or a lot of shows and videos that were playing during that time that we thought would target, you know, people that were actually voting members of the Academy. And then obviously Sylvia and her team did an amazing job in getting it out there in the press and getting, you know, some, you know, more kind of like on the ground, voters aware of it.
And also,
I think this is also a place, though, where traditional media does help a lot, like traditional pieces, because you got to think about the Academy voters. The TV Academy is not as old as the Film Academy, but still they tend to be a little more traditional in the way they look at things. So I think that having a great LA Times piece, you know, somewhere it may have stuck in their minds, and when they saw the list of nominees, they thought, oh yeah, her story, I remember reading about that in a respected, you know, outlet, so it must be something worth checking out, you know. So I think it probably made people more aware of your show over maybe some of the, I don't know all the ones that were listed there, but I'm sure it helped to have that name recognition.
well, and also what I was going to say is I learned a lot about what goes into the dissemination of the videos online that Nom helped us with at cost, and I learned about, what was the term? Was it poaching, or was it?
No, Conquest.
Conquest, which is where they place your ad, which in our case was the For Your Consideration video, in front of the YouTube video for your competitors. So the other shows that were nominated in our category, this company went through and they were like, hey, here's a For Your Consideration ad that plays before you watch this other video. So that was pretty cool.
I didn't know you could do that.
I didn't either. It's vicious.
Actually kind of leads on to my next question about ads in front of your episodes and trying to monetize the show. How much did you try to do that, and what was the success rate?
Have we made any money yet?
Like a couple hundred.
A couple of hundred?
A couple $100.
So only $149,000 more to
Yeah,
go.
exactly. We're so close. Yeah, I mean, we enabled the feature to you know, do the pop-up ads. I don't think we did the one where you have to watch it. It's all the ones that are skippable, or you can click out of it. But yeah, we made maybe $200.
It's a shame because I went into independent web series making for the money. So I'm shocked that it hasn't worked out yet.
But didn't you guys, that was a choice, a conscious choice you guys made to make it available to the community. You know, I remember having these conversations with you and we actually use this in the press a lot. We talk about this with the media, and it was part of our pitch that, you know, it was free on purpose, and it was free because you didn't want people to have to get out their credit cards and pay for this.
Well, I mean, the truth is the primary audience that I was concerned with, like who I really had in mind when we made this, was other trans women, and particularly those who were at risk, the girls who were being killed, like in an epidemic across this country and globally. And when I think of those girls, they're not spending $100 a year for an Amazon thing to watch Transparent. They probably wouldn't watch Transparent anyways. It's far too white and middle class for them. Or, you know, they'll watch Orange is the New Black if they can get Netflix, but they might not do that. They probably don't own computers. But these girls have cell phones. They watch YouTube videos on those, and they watch them in the libraries, and globally too. We wanted to make sure that it was available anywhere without the different kind of like regional considerations. So, I mean, I don't want to overstate it. It always kind of feels weird in these kind of settings to get into these aspects, but it's true. This content saves lives, and like that was part of our point in doing this. This is a community that is under such incredible duress and has no refuge, has no sanctuary, no place to turn to where they can see themselves reflected in a positive light, much less be a main character with agency and has a capacity for, you know, love and respect and a happy ending. And we needed that. We needed it desperately. And I felt like I owed it to all the people who have come before me and have enabled me to stay alive this long, to make sure that that was available to them.
Have you been able to track, I would imagine you can track viewership through through YouTube, right?
Yeah, you can see, they have so many analytics. You can see where people are watching, how long they're watching. You can also, one of the features that we really liked about YouTube is that users can submit subtitles. So it's now been translated into 10 languages.
Just by users.
By
By
users.
users.
Yeah, they do that
Yeah.
all on their own.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're seeing people watching it, you know, in over, I think, 127 countries and territories. And, you know, and it's especially fulfilling, you know, seeing a lot of people viewing it in Brazil, has been translated into
Yeah, I
Portuguese.
mean, over 300 trans women have been murdered in Brazil this year alone, and that's typical every year. It's happened constantly, and no one cares. So we had a fan who just absolutely loved this story and wanted to make sure that she's Brazilian, and she wanted to make sure that people could see it there. So she translated our captions into Portuguese and has been like pushing it out all on her own. And we've had a lot of people do the same in Mexico as well.
Before we have questions for the room, so get your questions ready. My last question is plans for season 2? Do you have plans?
So right now, so Jen and I wrote a very detailed treatment. So rather than focusing on season 2 of the web series right now, we're actually focusing on getting picked up and developed into a 10-episode, 30-minute series. And we put together a pitch deck with all of the press and with the treatment as well, and sort of our visions for partnerships and whatnot. So we're sort of in the process now of exploring potential partners and people to work with on that front.
It's really, really good. Like what you see in her story is just like a prelude. Like the kinds of issues that we go into, I've never seen on TV before. I mean, I think we're the next step beyond looking and the L word and queer as folk, but we're like leaps and bounds ahead. It's like it's a close look at what queer community looks like today, and all of its like messy intersectionality. It's a really diverse cast, and we get into sex work and addiction and homelessness and HIV and the ways that LGBT organizations can sometimes actually be hostile to the very people they're supposed to serve, class differences within the community, what it's like to navigate, you know, sex and desire across like trans and cis relationships. It's really good. It's really good. And I just want the chance to make it.
Wow, you're whetting our appetites. Can't wait. So any questions from the room here?
What was the PR budget?
Oh, God. I don't even remember.
Well, it was discounted.
Good representation of what it would normally, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it was because it was a long campaign. I'd have to go back and look because we sort of came on in stages. Like there was, I think, were 3 separate proposals I found that we had done. So there was like the first phase of the campaign, and then there was for the crowdfunding and the trailer launch, and then there was the second phase that was for the actual launch,
Right.
and then there was a third phase that was for the Emmys.
Right.
So, you know, it was. I mean, I'm a bleeding heart, so I gave them like a really good discount. But I don't give that to everyone.
But that's been the real key to our success is how many people came on and reduced their rates, gave us free work, you know, got their friends involved, changed things around just so that they could be part of this because they believed in the story, they believed that it mattered, and they wanted to be part of it. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm currently I'm in an incubator lab program here and working on a web series. And so one of the things that I found really interesting about this is it's sort of independently done versus being done with like a production company. And so I wanted to know what type of maybe freedom or changes were you allowed to do with your web series by doing it sort of by yourselves rather than having like a development team or like a production company being in charge of it.
Well, it helps when your boss is your roommate and friend.
Yeah, I mean, I started my own production company, and this was the first project that I had. And it really was kind of the core. This is the core with Angelica, who, we made all the decisions. It was everything was mutual. We own it all equally. It's all ours. So every major decision had to be kind of unanimous, and it really was for the most part. I don't think we had some.
I like to fight with people. I kind of need to fight in order to like arrive at something, and I'm very, very stubborn. Like once I see something one way, it's really hard to change my mind. And like at one point, they all decided that we needed to add in a couple new scenes, and I really objected to one of them. I really didn't want it in the series, and we got into a real, fight over it, like screaming, like I quit kind of fight.
On my birthday.
Oh, was it really? With some resentment's coming out, and I like it. A little healing. This is good. But ultimately, like I did it, and they were right. But like that's just part of our process.
Also, Jen and it helps to work with people who, in general, you have an agreeable rapport with, and Jen and I are both, like, she's a triple Aquarius and I'm a double Aquarius, and so we have a policy where only one of us can be an Aquarian ice queen at a time. So it's sort of like, as long as one of us is, like, being reasonable and, then it usually worked out.
But I do think, the fact that, we were small, and the fact that we, it was all kind of founded on a friendship, first, it helped us get through. That what she's referring to, in a situation, with a company or a bigger studio or whatever, could be extremely problematic, and possibly not something that you could overcome. But I think that the kind of laying that foundation of friendship and trust and everything, I think, was how we were able to do that. And without...
The artistic process is messy, and if you don't feel comfortable to take risks, to fight with people, to try things out, get pushback, to be able to like feel free to. It's all about what It's ultimately it's about feeling and how that feeling shows up on screen. So we have to feel free to feel with each other, and that gets messy and uncomfortable. So that's the blessing of working with people that are going to be in your life no matter what.
And then not to mention the freedom of, what content, the core of the content to begin with versus being under a larger company that is going to have their own ideas about what an audience is going to want to see. And so, it was really great that we all, ideologically were in the same place in terms of the story we wanted to tell and how real we wanted to be with it.
That being said, we're ready to compromise by selling out to. If you have money, we can be reasonable.
We have like the R-rated version of the treatment. And
question, on the aisle.
Hi. So I have a question. How is it different to write the short form of the first season, and now that you're working on a treatment for 30-minute episodes? And if you could talk about like when you guys finished maybe the first season and thought about a second season short form, and like just basically how you approach character development and the scenes and where to cut, and if you if there's a different approach or not at all, or just.
Well, I'll say one thing about that real quickly. When we first thought about, okay, let's turn this into a 10-episode season, I was like, what are we going to do? Like, I have no idea. Like, there's no way we can fill 10 episodes. And like a couple months later, we're like, how do we whittle this down to just 10 episodes? There's too much material here. Yeah. As soon as we start to like take a look at the characters, the stories just multiply. They're like gremlins. They just go off in every direction. So I think Laura and I's issue has been actually managing things down rather than like trying to figure out how to grow them.
Right. Yeah, and I would say, also when Cait had mentioned before that for a second we were toying with the idea of presenting what we did shoot as a pilot, and I think there was a little bit of an anxiety, especially as we saw how much bigger of a deal the show was becoming. There was a little bit of anxiety of like, but we didn't write it as a pilot, especially because we were learning a lot more in that year and a half about writing pilots and about writing more of traditional format with the 3-act structure and whatnot. And so, it was a strange feeling to be like, oh no, this was not written to be presented that way. So I think that was also one of the reasons we did present it as a web series. But I think I think now when we've done the treatment, we did it very much in imagining the episodes as half hour. And when you have that much of a wealth of content that is waiting for you to create it, I think, I mean, we haven't technically written the pilot yet for the 10 episode, but I mean, it will be fine. I've lost my thread.
The advantage that we really have more than anything else, though, is that there are so many stories in our community that haven't been told.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just look around at the issues my friends are facing, and I see that they've never been done before in media. So we're kind of,
You're pulling from your real lives.
yeah, from real lives. Like, it's just we've never been looked at. It's like this whole thing. Like, so much of the press describes us as innovative, groundbreaking, revolutionary. I'm like, it's a fucking love story. It's about two characters who meet two other characters and they like each other. Yeah. That's the structure. That's all it is. It's only innovative because you've never thought of us as subjects. Like, people like me have always just been a punchline or something to like disgust the straight male lead. You know, the whole premise of this is okay, but what's her story? What is it like from her perspective? What we're doing, we're part of a larger thing that's happening in Hollywood right now, which is all the people who have been othered by straight white men for the last 2,000 years are saying, hey, we're going to tell this story from our perspective now. You know, I keep joking, not even a joke, but it's real. Like, you read the history of Hollywood, and, you know, there's a revolution every, 15 to 20 years. And in Hollywood, a revolution has been is a group of young straight white men pissing off old straight white men, and then bringing in their values and their norms, and that's the Hollywood Revolution. And it's true. I mean, they do reflect, changing cultural norms and the different ways that media can put those into form. I think what's happening right now is we're on the precipice of the first Hollywood Revolution that is going to be anything but straight white men telling their story. And in so doing, we're also going to change the ways that we do that, the ways that we tell stories and who we're telling to and how they're marketed and where they go to. And so we're a small part of something much bigger, and it's a real blessing.
I think that's a great place to end. So thank you so much, and good luck with season 2.
Thank you.
I think that's amazing to be able to do that and have that kind of support from an organization like Film Independent.
It's a 30-year-old arts organization that has been cultivating artists, curating artists, developing artists so that their stories can get told.